The knock shattered the quiet like a gunshot in a library. "Alex, open up, it's Michael. We need to talk. Now." And in that split second, before I even turned the knob, I knew. The ghost I'd spent a decade haunting had finally walked through the door, flesh and blood, to claim what was his. I remember the day I first laid eyes on Michael like it was etched in the rust of an old Ford truck, faded but impossible to ignore. It was a sticky August afternoon in 2015, the kind where the Ohio humidity clings to your skin like regret. I was 25, fresh out of a dead-end community college graphic design program in Cleveland, crashing on a buddy's couch in this forgotten speck of a town called Milford. Population, barely 5,000. The sort of place where everyone knows your business before you do, and the biggest excitement is the annual Corn Festival. I'd moved there on a whim, chasing a freelance gig that never panned out, but mostly because cities like Chicago felt too big, too anonymous for a guy like me. Gay, unapologetic in my rainbow keychain, but quiet about it. The kind of quiet that comes from too many sideways glances in high school locker rooms. Michael ran the local hardware store, a squat brick building on Main Street that smelled like sawdust and motor oil, the backbone of Milford's blue-collar heartbeat. He was 32 then, broad-shouldered from years of hauling lumber, with hazel eyes that crinkled at the corners like he'd seen too many sunsets alone. His husband. Yeah, they were married back when Ohio finally legalized it in 15. One of those rushed courthouse deals with cheap champagne and a justice of the peace who stuttered through the vows. Brandon was overseas. Afghanistan. Special Forces. The kind of deployment that started as 6 months and stretched into eternity. Michael didn't talk about it much at first. He just hired me on the spot when I wandered in asking about part-time work, my resume crumpled in my back pocket. "You're not from around here," he'd said, scanning my application with a half-smile that hit me like a curveball. "What brings a city boy to Milford?" "Looking for a fresh start." I'd lied, because admitting running from a string of bad hookups and a family that still whispers phase behind my back wasn't interview material. He nodded, like he got it, and that was that. I started stocking shelves, ringing up locals who eyed me like I was the new flavor of weird, too artsy, too open with my sir and ma'am. That somehow came off sarcastic. But Michael? He treated me like I belonged. We'd close up shop at 6, crack open a couple of IPAs from the craft brewery down the road, local stuff, hoppy and bitter like the Rust Belt winters, and talk about everything and nothing. The Browns' eternal heartbreak. How the lake out by Route 42 looked like glass at dawn. The way his wedding band caught the fluorescent lights, a constant reminder that he was taken, even if Brandon's letters arrived like postcards from another planet. Sporadic, typed on military stationery, full of "I love you," but light on details. 3 months in, it happened. Rainy Tuesday, shop empty except for us. I was alphabetizing screws in the back aisle when he appeared, shoulders slumped, a letter clutched in his fist. He's extended again. Indefinite. His voice cracked, and before I could think, I was there, arms around him, his head on my shoulder, the scent of pine soap and despair filling the space between us. We didn't kiss that night, but we cried, and in the months that followed, the hugs lingered. The beers turned into dinners at his place, a cozy craftsman bungalow on Elm, with creaky floors and photos of him and Brandon grinning in fatigues, arms slung around each other like they owned the world. I fell first, hard and stupid, the way you do when someone's broken pieces start fitting yours. Michael resisted, swore up and down it was just friendship, that Brandon was his anchor. But late nights turned to early mornings, his hand brushing mine over coffee, our laughs sinking like an old radio station finally tuning in. By Christmas, we were sharing a bed, his body warm and tentative against mine, whispers of "this doesn't change anything," that we both knew were lies. I became his comfort, his distraction, the guy who fixed the leaky faucet while he stared at the ceiling, wondering if Brandon was staring at the same stars halfway across the world. But I knew. God, I knew from the start. Every time he called me B, a slip of the tongue he'd laugh off with a beer chaser. Every photo album he flipped through when he thought I wasn't looking, fingers tracing Brandon's jawline like it was Braille. I was the replacement, the stand-in for a soldier who'd promised forever and vanished into the fog of war. And for the life of me, I couldn't walk away. Milford wrapped around us like kudzu, small-town nosy but tolerant in that Midwestern way, where folks wave at church and gossip over potlucks, but don't pry too deep into roommates. We built a life. Weekend hikes along the Cuyahoga River, where the water ran brown but the air felt clean, barbecues in the backyard with my sister visiting from Akron, her kids calling Michael Uncle Mike, like it was normal. He proposed after 2 years, not with a ring but a key to the house, murmuring, "Stay, please." We didn't have a ceremony. Too raw, too soon. But we had each other. Or so I thought. The cracks showed early, though. Subtle at first, like hairline fractures in a windshield. Michael's mom, Evelyn, with her perm and her cross necklace, would visit and set an extra place at the table just in case, her eyes flicking to the empty chair like Brandon might materialize. "He's a hero, you know," she'd say, patting my hand in that pitying way that made my stomach twist. "Pray for him, Alex. Miracles happen." I'd smile, choke down my green bean casserole, and later, in bed, Michael would apologize with kisses that tasted like guilt. "She's old school. Give her time." But time didn't heal, it festered. I'd catch him on the porch at dawn, staring at his phone, waiting for a ping that never came. Once, after a particularly brutal letter from the Red Cross, presumed captured in hostile territory, he drank too much bourbon and confessed. "I dream about him every night." "What if I'm forgetting?" "You're not," I'd whisper, holding him tighter, ignoring the knife in my gut. Because I was the one forgetting that I was borrowing someone else's heart, piecing it back with Band-Aids and hope. By year 5, we'd settled into a rhythm. I took over the shop's books, turned it into an online thing, shipping custom toolkits to hobbyists nationwide. Small wins that paid the mortgage. Michael coached Little League on weekends, his laugh booming across the diamond as kids swung for fences they couldn't reach. We adopted a mutt from the shelter, a scruffy lab mix named Scout, who slept between us like a furry chaperone. Friends emerged from the woodwork. Tom from the diner, with his endless stories about Nam. Lisa, the librarian who hosted book clubs that devolved into wine nights. It felt real. American dream real, the kind sold in Hallmark cards and pickup truck ads. 2 guys against the world, grilling burgers and cheering for the Cavs. But the secrets piled up like snowdrifts. Michael kept Brandon's dog tags in a locked drawer, polishing them on anniversaries I pretended not to notice. I'd find him scrolling old emails, tears blurring the screen, and when I'd ask, he'd shut down. "It's nothing. Just memories." The misunderstandings grew thorns. One 4th of July, fireworks popping like gunfire over the lake. He flinched, full-body recoil, and bolted to the bathroom. I followed, found him dry heaving. "PTSD spillover," he muttered. From his stories. But it was mine too, by proxy, the war seeping into our sheets like smoke. I started therapy on the sly, driving an hour to Toledo so no one in Milford would whisper. The counselor, a no-nonsense woman named Rita with a Steelers mug, called it secondary trauma. "You're grieving a ghost you never met," she said, "and loving a man who's half gone." I pushed it down, buried it under date nights at the drive-in, greasy popcorn and his head on my lap during rom-coms, and road trips to the Smokies, where the mountains swallowed our arguments whole. But the big one hit in year 7, a doozy that left scars. His dad died. Heart attack in the garage, wrench still in hand. And at the funeral, Evelyn cornered me in the church basement. "You're a phase, Alex. A distraction. When Brandon comes home, and he will, you'll fade away like morning fog." Her words landed like buckshot, and I fired back. "Maybe Brandon's the ghost keeping Michael from living." She slapped me. Not hard, but enough to draw stares from the casseroles. Michael walked in mid-aftermath, piecing it together, and for the first time, he chose me, pulled me aside, defended me to her in the parking lot, voice steady as steel. "Alex is my family now. Deal with it or don't come around." We drove home in silence, rain lashing the windshield, and that night, he held me like I was the only solid thing left. "I'm sorry. She's wrong. You're not a replacement." Lies, sweet and necessary, but they bought us time. 2 more years of fragile peace, until the knock. It was a Thursday, ordinary as oatmeal. I'd just flipped the closed sign at the shop, Scout whining at my feet for his walk, when Michael's truck screeched up. He burst through the door, face ashen, clutching a crumpled envelope from the Department of Defense. He's alive, Alex. They found him. In a camp. God, 10 years. He's coming home next week. The world tilted. My knees buckled against the counter, tools rattling like distant thunder. Brandon. The name I'd uttered in prayers I didn't believe in, the shadow in every "I love you." Alive. Returning. And in that envelope's sterile font, our borrowed life circled the drain. I forced a smile, because what else do you do when the floor drops out? That's amazing, Mike. He must be broken, he finished, eyes distant. The reports say POW for 8 years. Torture. Amnesia spells. But he's ours again. Ours. Not mine. I swallowed the bile, hugged him as he sobbed into my neck. Relief, terror, a cocktail I'd never taste. That night, we made love like it was the last time, slow and desperate, his hands mapping me like a soldier charting enemy lines. But dawn brought the truth. He was already gone, packing a bag for the airport pickup, murmuring about giving him space, while I stared at the ceiling, wondering how you'd grieve someone who'd never truly been yours. The days blurred into a fever dream. Michael threw himself into preparations, stocking the fridge with Brandon's favorites, Bud Light, beef jerky, the banal comforts of homecoming, scrubbing the house until it gleamed like a showroom. I tagged along, numb, fetching dry cleaning for the welcome home banner Lisa insisted on hanging downtown. Milford buzzed. The mayor declared a parade. Evelyn baked enough pies to feed the county, and Tom slapped backs at the VFW, toasting our boy back from the brink. Me? I was the invisible man, smiling through gritted teeth, fielding questions like, "How's Michael holding up?" with lines scripted from bad TV. Over the moon. But inside, the storm brewed. Secrets I'd buried clawed their way up. Nights I'd spent alone while he stared at faded photos, the way he'd flinch at fireworks and blame old habits. And the big one. 2 years ago, after a brutal argument about adopting a kid, not now, Alex. Not with this hanging over us. I'd found his journal, tucked under the mattress like contraband, pages filled with "Dear B" letters he'd never sent. I miss your laugh. Alex is kind, but he's not you. Forgive me for moving on. I'd read them in the garage, tears mixing with engine grease, then burn them in the fire pit. Confrontation? Nah, that would have shattered us. So I swallowed it, let the ash fertilize our garden of half-truths. Brandon arrived on a propeller plane to the regional airport, a skeletal figure in fatigues, medals pinned crooked, eyes hollowed by ghosts only he could see. Michael ran to him, enveloping him in a bear hug that swallowed the tarmac. I hung back, waving like a fool, my heart a lead weight. Up close, Brandon was a relic, tall like Michael, but sharper, with a jaw carved from granite and tattoos snaking up his arms, stories in ink I'd never decode. "Thanks for taking care of him," he rasped, gripping my hand too tight, his palm calloused from chains I couldn't imagine. His voice was gravel, accent pure Texas drawl, the kind that lingers like barbecue smoke. The first week was a minefield of awkward grace. Brandon crashed on the couch, insisted, said bedrooms felt too soft, and I'd cook breakfasts of eggs and bacon, listening to them reminisce over coffee. Stories of boot camp pranks, their first kiss behind a barracks in Kentucky. I'd nod, laugh at the right spots, but each anecdote was a barb. "Remember that road trip to Nashville? Best weekend ever." Michael's eyes lit up in a way they hadn't for me in years, and I'd excuse myself to walk scout, punching trees by the lake until my knuckles bled. The misunderstandings ignited like dry grass. One night, beers flowing at Tom's barbecue, Brandon clapped me on the back. "Heard you kept the store afloat. Real American hero shit." I mumbled thanks, but later, alone in the kitchen, Michael snapped, "Don't patronize him. Alex isn't some sidekick." Brandon overheard, fire in his eyes. "What the hell? I'm trying here." It escalated, yells echoing off the siding, accusations flying like shrapnel. "You think I wanted this?" Brandon roared. 10 years in a hole. Thinking he forgot me? Michael, torn, stammered defenses, but I saw it. The pull, magnetic, yanking him back to the man he'd vowed to before I ever entered the picture. I confronted him that midnight, porch light buzzing like a faulty halo. Am I just the interim Mike? The guy who held the fort till the real captain sailed in? He deflated, head in hands. I love you, Alex. But this, it's like waking from a coma. He's my past, you're my now. Words like poultice on a gangrene wound. Too late, too little. The betrayal stung deepest when I found them kissing in the garage 2 days later. Not passionate, just a brush of lips. Comfort, maybe, but it gutted me. I didn't yell. Packed a bag instead, left a note. Take your time. I'll crash at Lisa's. The explosion came on the 10th day, a powder keg lit by Evelyn's meddling. She'd hosted a welcome home dinner at the church hall. Potluck spread, American flags draped like confetti, and midway through her toast, to miracles and second chances, she outed the elephant. Alex has been such a dear friend, stepping in when things got lonely. The room hushed, forks clinking to a stop. Brandon's face darkened, Michael's flushed crimson. Later, in the parking lot, under sodium lamps casting long shadows, Brandon cornered me. You slept with my husband. While I was rotting in that camp. His words were a blade, twisting with the injustice of it all. It wasn't like that. I choked. We thought you were gone. He laughed, bitter as black coffee. Yeah, well, surprise. And now what? You gonna fight for him like a man, or slink off like the placeholder you are? The slap of truth burned worse than any fist. Michael pulled us apart, but the damage was done, cracks spiderwebbing into chasms. That night, he chose, I need to figure this out with Brandon. Alone. Not us against the world anymore. Just echoes. I fled to the lake house my folks left me up in Hocking Hills, a rickety A-frame smelling of pine and mildew, where cell service flickered like hope. Days bled into weeks. Chopping would till my arms ached, sketching designs for clients that blurred into abstractions of fractured hearts. Therapy calls with Rita turned confessional. You were always the bridge, Alex. Time to burn it and build your own road. Anger simmered. Phoned in rage at Michael for the half-loves, at Brandon for the survivor's entitlement, at myself for settling. But under it, empathy bloomed, unwanted. Pity for the soldier pieced back wrong, for the husband straddling fault lines. The twist hit like lightning. A call from Tom, voice grave. Brandon's not right, kid. Nightmares. Flinching at shadows. He pushed Michael last week. Nothing bad, but we're changed him. My gut clenched. I'd painted him villain in my mind, the thief stealing back his throne, but reports trickled in. VA psych evals, meds that didn't stick, a man hollowed out. Michael showed up unannounced one drizzly October afternoon, thinner, eyes ringed like a raccoon's. He's not the same, and neither am I. We talked for hours on the dock, feet dangling in the chill water, fireflies winking like hesitant stars. Secrets spilled. Brandon's guilt over captured comrades, Michael's decade of what-ifs, my buried journal ashes. I betrayed you both, he admitted. Loved you while holding his ghost. The climax crested that weekend, a storm front rolling in from Lake Erie. Brandon drove up, uninvited, desperate, bottle of Jack in hand, demanding closure. We three sat in the living room, lamplight pooling like spilled secrets, air thick with unspoken accusations. He unloaded first, rants about sand and screams, how captivity stripped him bare, made love feel like a luxury he no longer deserved. I came home to a stranger's life. You too. You built something real. I can't compete with that. Michael wept, bridging the gap with a hand on each of us, but the Real bomb dropped from me. You're not competing, Brandon. You're haunting, and I'm done being the casualty. Words flew, raw, unfiltered, the kind that carve canyons. Brandon confessed a secret that gut-punched us both. In the camp, he'd written letters to Michael, smuggled out via a guard, begging release. I let go years ago. Wanted you happy, even if it killed me. Michael recoiled, betrayed anew. You what? And I mourned you like the dead. Fury peaked, fists clenched, voices shattering glass. And in the melee, Brandon swung wild, clipping the table, splintering wood. Not at us, but the violence echoed his fractures. I stepped in, not as lover, but witness. Enough. We're all broken, but staying glued out of duty? That's the real cage. Dawn broke gray, coffee steaming between us like a truce flag. No easy fixes, no tearful threesome, no villain slinking away. Brandon checked into a VA rehab in Dayton, first step on a long road. Michael and I, we parted, not with slams, but sighs. A lease on the bungalow split amicable. Scout custody shared like divorced parents. I love you, he said at the door, rain beating on his jacket. Always will. But I need to love him too, the him that's left. I nodded, the ache humanistic, not Hollywood. No winners, just survivors piecing quilts from ragged cloth. Months later, from my new apartment in Columbus, bigger city, fresh freelance gigs. Postcards arrived. One from Michael, a lake sunset with healing slow. Miss your laugh. Another from Brandon, terse, therapy sucks. Thanks for not hating me. I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I hiked the Scioto trails alone, sketched a series on ghost bridges, art that sold to a gallery in Tremont, my first real acclaim. 10 years as replacement taught me. Love isn't ownership, it's overlap. Messy, overlapping circles in a Venn diagram of hurt. I emerged scarred but standing, empathetic to the soldier's shadows, angry at the system's silences, but free. Milford faded to memory, a chapter closed with empathy's ink. And in quiet moments by the river, watching herons skim the surface, I whispered to the wind, your turn to rebuild. Not bitter, just human.